In this lab, we're going to take a look at several properties for several different chemicals. You'll see here the lab document. The link to this lab document is located in the description. There's a flow chart located in the lab document so that you can identify properties of the several different ionic and covalent compounds. Please note that we are omitting the sodium hydroxide, so that will not be tested in this. We will only have 7 chemicals rather than 8. You see the chemicals laid out in powder form. We've got some test tubes. The first thing we're going to do is test for solubility. You'll see the test tubes are numbered. So we've placed powder inside of each one of the test tubes, and now we're just filling it with some deionized water. Then we're going to test for solubility. And so immediately you can see some of these chemicals begin to show that they are soluble pretty quickly, while others seem to resist dissolving in the water. And so we'll continue here, and we'll check the status of each of them in just a second. Remember, if it's soluble, it's going to be transparent throughout. You really should not see any precipitate at the bottom, or if you do, not very much. We add a little bit more deionized water there just in case that solution became saturated. Here we're going to use our glass rod and stir in some of these just to make sure that we're allowing all of the solute to have access to the solvent. When you see it is milky colored like that, that is telling you that it is not transparent, thus it is not soluble. And again, you can see the test tubes are numbered, so you should be able to see which one we are working with. I did go in the order that is on the lab document. In theory, you'd be able to identify each of the unknowns based off of their properties, but in order to make this lab a little bit more accessible, each of the chemicals are known and placed in the corresponding test tubes. So 1, 2, 3. Remember, there is no 4. So now you should be able to determine which of those were soluble and which were not. Our next test per the lab sheet is going to be the iodine test. I'm going to be careful with this because iodine is not something that you want to get on your skin. It is one of our halogens. Only a couple of drops are necessary. And here you see that color change. So as an indicator, that should help you determine where that particular chemical goes. in your flow chart. So that wraps up the iodine test. Now we move on to the acid test. In this case, we're just going to use some vinegar. You'll know that there's a reaction if a gas is immediately formed. And here you see we've got some gas bubbles that have in fact formed. So there is a reaction. And again, this is test tube 8, no reaction. Next up, we're going to use the red litmus paper. We're looking for it to turn blue to indicate pH. And again, follow along with the linked lab document, and you'll know what we're testing for. We start with 1. You see it did not turn blue. We'll continue with this process. This is test tube 7. Again, we see it did not turn blue. There's no color change there with the indicator. Similar result here. And finally, we do see a color change there that did turn blue. Now we're going to use blue paper. Again, we're looking for this to turn red. Nothing on that one. Nothing on this. This is test tube number 5. Now we're going to wrap up our acid test. Obviously here, test tube 6, we added our acid. We have an immediate reaction, rather violent reaction. We'll conduct the alcohol test and see if there was any further solubility with alcohol. And what we're looking for to determine is the substance soluble in alcohol or an alcohol solution compared to just the deionized water. And we'd be able to tell relatively quickly if there is further solubility once it's introduced to alcohol solutions. And so you see this is test tube 1. We are introducing it again to that alcohol solution. And we'll determine, is it soluble now in alcohol? And you can see it is not wanting to dissolve at all in that alcohol. Go ahead and look at test tube 6 here, add some alcohol. And these test tubes mirror each other numbers wise from front to back, but we'll just compare a couple of them to give you an idea of what soluble looks like versus what maybe it doesn't look like, so you can make a determination. And you can see a little bit of precipitate in one, not so much the other. So again, the lab document is in the description below. The flowcharts you need are in the lab document, and as always, thanks for watching.